Hello, it's Dumplet here. Here's an item on divisors. So let d sub 1, d sub 2, d sub 3, all the way until d sub k. So k apparently is the number of divisors of 2022. So let them be the positive integer divisors of 2022. We're asked to get the value of the sum of the reciprocals of d1, d2, d3, all the way up to dk. So essentially, we're just getting the sum of the reciprocals of the factors of 2022. So this item came from the DAM 2022, an exam that Dumplet has hosted, so the link to the PDF file will be in the description. As usual, pause this video if you'd like to give this item a try. But if you're done, let us dive into the solution. So in the previous Dumplet tutorials, I've talked about getting the sum of divisors. Here we're asked about getting the sum of the reciprocals of the divisors. So we have to do something here before we could use the technique for the sum of the divisors. So just in case you guys are not yet familiar on how to get the sum of the divisors of a certain positive integer, click this card and you guys will be able to see how do we get there. So how do we get the sum of the positive integer divisors of a certain number from there? Now, before we are able to get the sum of the divisors involved in this question, we have to do a trick here. So here we have the sum of the reciprocals, and I'm going to propose we're going to do a step here. So we have to multiply this thing by 2022. Now, well, 2022 is the number we're working with. That's why we're just doing 2022. Okay. Now, obviously, we can't just multiply by 2022, so we have to divide this result by 2022. Now, take a look at the numerator here. We know that if I expand it out, the first term is going to be 2022 divided by d1. Now, we know d1 is a factor of 2022, so we know that 2022 divided by d1, that's going to be a divisor of 2022. We could have the same reasoning for 2022 divided by d2. That's going to be a factor of 2022. And this will continue all the way until the last term, 2022 divided by d sub k. In fact, we could try to get what k is. So we know that 2022 in factored form, that's going to be 2 times 3 times 337. So using the counting the number of divisors trick, we could just kind of say that, okay, the exponents are 1s, and we just have to add 1 to each of the exponents, so it becomes 2, 2, and 2, and finally multiply them out. So here, 2022 has 8 divisors, so that's going to give us the value of k. So let me just write this one a little bit more specifically. D sub k, it's going to be d sub 8. Right, now, as I've mentioned, the numerator here are just sum of divisors. So we know that this one is a divisor, this one is a divisor all the way until d sub 8, that's a divisor. But obviously d sub 1, d sub 2, all the way until d sub 8, they are different numbers. So these 8 numbers over here are the divisors of 2022. So essentially, the numerator here, it's just the same as saying we're asked to get the sum of the divisors of 2022. All right, so it's simple as that. We just have to realize this trick that, oh, since we're just adding factors, then it must be the same thing as just getting the sum of the divisors of 2022. And yes, we have this this expression to be equivalent to the previous one. All right, so now that we have this, we now realize that, okay, the trick for getting the sum of the reciprocals is apparently just getting the sum of the divisors. So sum of divisors, let's just say generally a positive integer n. Then we just have to divide this result by n. And yes, that's going to be the formula for the sum of the divisors, sorry, the sum of the reciprocals of the divisors. So we just apply the trick we learned from the video on how to get the sum of the divisors. So we have to factor 2022 again. So we have 2 times 3 times 337. And since we have 3 numbers here, we'll be able to form 3 factors to multiply. And we sum up from the powers from obviously the 0th power until the power here. Well, all of these are just 2 raised to 1. All of these are just like to the first power anyways. So it's going to be 2 raised to 0 plus 2 raised to 1 times 3 raised to 0 plus 3 raised to 1 times 337 raised to 0 plus 337 raised to 1. Now this would be equal to 3 times 4 times 338, and I'm not going to multiply it out since we have to divide it by 2022 still. So essentially the numerator here, it's going to be the same as 3 times 4 times 338, and we're just dividing this result by 2022. We could do some cancellation, and we can do well, the 3 and the 2022 cancels nicely. We could borrow a 2 here from 2022, from the 4. So essentially it's going to be 337 at the bottom, and just multiply everything out. 2 times 338, that's going to give the 676, and the 337 in the denominator as you can see here. Right, and this will be our final answer. Hopefully you guys learned something new from this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.